Hey team, welcome back to my channel. The source code for this video is available on my GitHub account. Go to softwareNuggets, go to the repository PostgreSQL shorts resources. Look for a file called PostgreSQL RANK.SQL. Here's the source code. You got it. Let's create a table called employee cells. Now, out of these columns, which column could be used for ranking? Well, remember, it has to be a number or a date. So let us use the sales amount column. Now we have all of our data that's available, and notice sales amount is indeed a numeric value. In this diagram, I'm going to compare two functions, the rank function and the dense rank function. Now on the rank function, notice that we have gaps. Now these gaps are for competitive positioning. As you can see on line 6, Eve, she is in 4th place. And then on line 7, we can see Hank is in 7th place. Hank realizes that there are 6 people before him, and indeed he is 7th best. That is what ranking is about. Whereas in dense rank, that is more of a functional output for groups, group performance. And you can see here, line 7, Hank is in 5th place. We can see before that there are 4 groups, 1, 2, 3, and 4. He is indeed in 5th place. I hope this comparison makes sense. In our first SQL statement, we're going to select the columns and then we're going to use the rank function. Notice it says rank over order by sales amount descending as sales rank. Now let's look at one thing. When you see over, say to yourself, what is the order of the data I want to compare? So here you can see that I'm going to order the sales amount descending. Now we know descending is high to low. Now rank says I'm going to put a numeric value on that. So the row that is on top will get 1 and I'm going to work my way down. And we now know ranking has gaps. So let's go ahead and execute this. And then look at the data and you can see that we indeed have gaps. We remember the Eve and Hank example earlier where I explained that. Let us now modify this SQL statement and type in dense rank, and we know what that is. That's more of a team sport ranking. And notice that we now have no gaps. In our second statement, notice that we're going to use an aggregate function and group by. Now group by does something magical. It combines rows and it saves those values for the aggregate function to compute its value. So on this example, I want to group by the employee name and department. So that will make a group of people, and then the sum function will use that group and compute a sales amount total. You can see here, George for clothing, $9,500 puts him in 1st place. So using the rank function over that same aggregate function's value produces this number. And notice George at the highest and David at the lowest value. I modified the app to use dense rank. Notice there were no ties, so our ranking was just 1 to 10, no difference. In our next example, we're going to be using the partition by clause. Now, these are important to remember that partition by does not reduce rows. And the way I normally think about partition by, it is like creating separate contests within a big competition. You can see here below, I've ran this function and clothing has a rank of 1, 2, 3, 4. And then electronics has another competition, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So you can see how we partition by department. Hopefully that makes sense. Notice on the aggregate function, that happens after we do grouping. So after the data has formed groups by employee name, department, that is when the sum function is executed. Here's the output for that SQL statement. I have modified this example to dense rank. Remember, this has to deal with gaps. And when we have a dense rank, that means there's no gaps. And this only exists when we have ties. And notice we have no tied values, so there are no reordering. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's for clothing, partition by department, electronics, 1, 2, 3, and then furniture, 1, 2, 3. You got it. In our last example, notice that I'm using rank and dense rank in the same SQL statement, and I have the order by clause in both of them. But let's clean this up just a little bit. So you can see I've added this window name as clause. Now our clause is this statement right here. So put that there. And then let's call this department window. Now what we can do is go replace that code up here is just that. That makes sense? So our code has just been cleaned up a little bit. And now you can see how we're using the window clause to clean up this SQL statement. Let's go ahead and execute that, execute, and notice identical output. I'm hoping that these examples using the rank functions were beneficial, and now you'll be able to use this in your SQL statements. I'm Scott Johnson. I look forward to seeing you back in my next video. Take care.